everybody, and welcome to your Top Think Tanks review. I am your host, Bryce Dolan. Today we're going to look at 5 of the top 50 United States think tanks, and we'll look at an article from each one of these think tanks. First, we begin the show with the Rand Corporation as we go to Syria. Then, the Pew Research Center shows that Americans are less concerned than a decade ago over immigrants' impact on the workforce. Next, the United States Institute of Peace looks into ISIS making sex slavery a key tactic of terrorism. Then, Human Rights Watch wants to fulfill the promise of ending child marriage. Then we'll end the show as we look to South Korea's progressive mayor in Seoul and the upcoming Korean presidential election. Now, to begin the show, the Rand Corporation states the U.S. are the only ones that can save Syrians. Syrian and Russian killing in Aleppo is humiliating the West, disgusting the global community, and challenging U.S. leadership. With elections only 5 weeks away, Washington has transition fever and is dithering. Unless it acts soon to raise costs to Syria and Russia, their forces could threaten more of the lives of the 250,000 people in Aleppo. And the Kremlin might think that in the future it can mount further challenges to the West and America. In many ways, the international community has failed Syrians over 5.5 years. In April, the United Nations and Arab League envoy to Syria declared that 400,000 had died. Current intensive attacks on rebel-held eastern Aleppo are raising this number. Now, killings in Syria could approach the magnitude of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, in which more than 500,000 people died. Now, intervention in Syria has brought tactical gains to Russia, but not a path to clear achievement, although there is still a possibility Russia will find its footing. Now, in September 2015, when Syrian President Bashar Assad's forces were losing ground to the Islamic State and anti-Assad rebels, Moscow dispatched air power and special forces to aid him. President Vladimir Putin described the purpose as stabilizing legitimate power in Syria and creating conditions for political compromise. Now, Moscow's air power, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Hezbollah militants helped stabilize the battle lines. But Mikhail Kondyrnok, a prominent Russian military observer, warned recently that Syrian armed forces have not conducted a single successive offensive during the past year, and results of the fighting are disastrous. Like his father, Hafez Assad, who ruled Syria for 3 decades, Bashar is playing the Kremlin, undermining its strategic flexibility. Now, the Kremlin seems eager for a quick, if gory, end to the rebellion in eastern Aleppo. It doubtless wants the international fury to fade, although how much Moscow cares about global opinion is a question. Now, in any case, Russia might think that an America in political transition will be less able to rally global condemnation. So, as things get worse in Syria, in Aleppo, the death toll climbing to 400,000, it doesn't look like Russia and the United States are going to come to terms anytime soon. All right, next on the show, ladies and gentlemen, we go over to the Pew Research Center as they show us how Americans are less concerned than a decade ago about immigrants in the workforce. And this relates directly to Syria because of Syria, there's a lot of refugees coming out of that area. Now, Americans' views about the impact the growing number of immigrants working in the U.S. is having on American workers have softened notably over the past decade, according to a new survey by the Pew Research Center. Now, the overall population is almost evenly split on whether growing numbers of immigrant workers help or hurt U.S. workers overall. 45% say having more immigrant workers hurts Americans, and 42% say this trend helps U.S. workers. The survey referred to immigrants in general and did not specify where they were legally permitted or undocumented. Now, these attitudes have changed significantly since 2006, which found the Pew Research Center survey found that 55% of Americans believe that the presence of more immigrant workers hurt U.S. laborers. That figure has since decreased by 10 percentage points. Additionally, the share of Americans who thought a decade ago that the growing number of immigrants helped workers was 28%, marking a 14-point increase in that positive view. Now, there is a far wider partisan divide on this question, one that has been hotly debated during the 2016 campaign, then more hotly than there was 10 years ago. Now, the new poll shows that since 2006, Democrats have moved substantially in the direction of seeing immigrant workers as a plus when it comes to their effect on the American worker. Today, about 6 in 10, 58%, say that having more immigrant workers helps U.S. job holders, up from just 30% who said this in 2006. Now, over the same time period, Republican opinion has shifted slightly in the opposite direction. Among adults who identify with the GOP, 54% now believe that the growing number of immigrant workers hurts American workers, a 6-point increase since 2006. Now, overall, when Americans are asked what hurts American workers, the top answers are outsourcing jobs to other countries. 80% of Americans think that this hurts U.S. job holders. More foreign-made products being sold in the U.S., 77% thinks this hurts, and increased use of contract or temporary employees, which is 57%. Automation of jobs comes in at 50%, and the decline in union membership comes in at 49%. So besides the outsourcing of jobs and thinking that foreign-made products being sold in the U.S. thinks that it hurts U.S. job holders, other than that, everything's pretty much split down the middle of this immigrant employment opinion. Now, moving next to the United States Institute of Peace. They call out ISIS as they make sex slavery a key tactic of terrorism. The sexual violence committed against women and girls by the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria can only begin to be addressed with a multi-pronged response from the global to the local level, said Zainab Hawa Bangura, the United Nations point person on the issue. Now, speaking at the U.S. Institute of Peace, Bangura cited work ranging from promotion of UN resolutions to talks with religious leaders to suggest how the brutal, systematic sexual slavery imposed by the extremist group might be undermined. Now, Bangura called for a shift in mindset on ISIS's violent oppression of females, particularly the religious minority women of Iraq and Syria who have been captured and often sold multiple times as sex slaves for the group's fighters and officials. These women are victims of terrorism, she said, and their plight should be prioritized in every plan for countering violent extremism. When we think of terrorism, we tend to think of hijacking, hostage-taking, explosions, and property destruction, she said, but we cannot deplore the public face of terrorism while ignoring the violence that terrorists inflict on women and girls in private and behind closed doors. Bangura and other experts at the event, co-sponsored with the McCain Institution for International Leadership, agreed there is no way to influence the conduct of ISIS because it acts outside of virtually every norm of international law and accepted conduct. Now, the same is true of extremist groups operating in 19 countries examined in her last report to the UN Security Council. Now, all of them use sexual violence as a way to break communities and control populations, a tactic of war and terrorism. Viable approaches to countering ISIS's sexual violence involve working to delegitimize its ideology and degrade its capabilities. This is not a woman's issue, said Cindy McCain in remarks opening the October 5th discussion. It's an issue of peace, of human rights, and of terrorism. That's the distinction we have to make. Now, we're going to stay on the topic of children. I know we just got done talking about the sex slavery for women and girls, but we're going to go more towards the children topic as we move on to our next article from Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch looks to fulfill the promise of ending child marriage. Now, Mehek Karn, age 19, told Human Rights Watch that she had 3 children, but 2 have already passed away. Her parents arranged her marriage at age 16. She was pregnant within a month. Her daughter was 1 month old at the time of the interview, but Mehek had also given birth to 2 sons, both of whom died as infants. I would not have had kids if I had known I would lose them. Around the world, 15 million girls marrying before age 18 each year. There are 720 million women married before age 18 alive today. At this rate, this number would reach 1.2 billion by 2050. Now, South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa have the highest rate of child marriages, but it occurs in every region, across different religions in rich and poor countries. But boys also marry as children as well, not only girls, but much far lower rates than girls. Now, child marriages have devastating consequences. Married girls and their babies face serious health risks, including death from early pregnancy. Married children usually leave school. They and their families remain mired in poverty, and married girls suffer domestic and sexual violence at rates higher than women who marry later. Now, ending child marriage won't be easy. It requires governments to set a goal, plan how to get there, and find the resources and political will to make the plan work. It requires many parts of government, those responsible for education, health, birth, and marriage registration, law enforcement, justice, and local government need to work together. So it's a big job, but it's one that every government in the world has promised to achieve. Under the new United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which came into effect in January 2016, countries have committed to eliminate all harmful practices such as child, early, and forced marriage and female genital mutilations by 2030. Now, October 11th is International Day of the Girl, a day chosen by the UN to galvanize worldwide enthusiasm for goals to better girls' lives, providing an opportunity for them to show leadership and reach their full potential. To mark International Day of the Girl this year, we ask you to join us in calling for an end to child marriage. Now, we're going to make that our hashtag today too, hashtag end child marriage. Now, to end the show, the New America Foundation takes us to South Korea before their presidential election, and we meet the current mayor of Seoul. Now, Park Won-soon, who has the calming mien and crinkled smile of a beloved college professor, but Park isn't about to lead your favorite seminar. He's busy serving as the 35th mayor of Seoul, South Korea's sprawling capital of 10 million people. Park is also widely rumored to be contemplating a run for the country's top post in the 2017 presidential election. Should he win, Park would join the ranks of several former mayors, notably Lee Myung-bak, who have moved several kilometers from Seoul City Hall to the Blue House, Korea's presidential palace. Now, a former human rights lawyer, Park is known for his progressive and occasionally populist politics. His activist streak dates back to the 1970s. He was expelled from the prestigious Seoul National University and imprisoned for 4 months after protesting the policies of then-dictator Park Chung-hee, the father of current South Korean president, the conservative Park Geun-hye. Now, during a recent trip to San Francisco, during the 40th anniversary of sister city relations between the two metropolises, the mayor sat for an interview in which he discussed his tenure, various social policies he is pursuing, and Seoul's high-tech aspirations. He also revealed a personal penchant for tweeting at and taking selfies with his constituents. Although he is fluent in English and holds a degree in international law from the London School of Economics, the interview was conducted in Korean with an interpreter. There are many examples of when social media interactions influence the way I do my job. In fact, the Night Owl bus was actually suggested to me by a university student via direct message on Twitter. Here, Park pulled out his phone, opening the Twitter app. He has about 1.6 million followers on Twitter, and scrolling to the message that read in Korean, "Thank you for the attention, sorry to bother you." In the course of any given day, Park says he receives so many tweets that I cannot possibly respond to every single one of them, but from time to time I do respond and find something interesting that I then task my staff with, like changing a certain policy. Later I receive messages back from constituents noting and appreciating the change, Park said. So what a great and up-and-coming leader that South Korea can look forward to. Hopefully he puts his name into the hat for the upcoming 2017 presidential elections for South Korea. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching this video. That does it for your Top Think Tanks review today. I was your host, Bryce Dolan, and I'll see you next time.